and welcome to Life of a Wizard by Mike Walter. We will be continuing the journey of Helena the Goblin. First off, we will be equipping the thief by giving her the Dagger of Sharpness. I gave the Dagger of Sharpness to Rosie, our thief. And we will journey onward. We packed up our belongings and left the tavern. The wizard was living in a tent outside of the ruins of his tower. It wasn't very far from Tornassa, so we walked. Parnassus had really decimated the poor man's residence. Bricks, broken equipment, and scattered herbs lay everywhere. "Why should I pay the guild for their failure?" the wizard reasoned. "Even if I wanted to, I can't. Everything I owned was in my tower, and it's in shambles." We took the simple solution and paid the 1,000 gold ourselves. The Fighter Guild was happy with our solution. They didn't care who paid, as long as they got their money. They paid us our 200 gold for services rendered, which still meant a loss of 800 gold. "Thank you, friend," the wizard said, happy to be free of the Fighters Guild. "Please take this gift as a thank you from me to you." He gave me a special staff. "The staff is a wizard's best weapon. With practice, you'll learn to channel great magic through it." I took the gift, uncertain at the time as to its true value. I remembered the historical day when the entire kingdom shook from an enormous earthquake, even though it wasn't until weeks later that the results were known. A small village named Scone in southern Daria had suddenly started being attacked from within. Their temple had begun to spew forth all manners of foul beasts. Many adventuring parties took it upon themselves to investigate the tunnels below. This vast dungeon soon became known as the Abyss. We didn't try our luck until nearly halfway into our adventuring career, many years after the monsters had appeared. We didn't want to just be another party of adventurers defeated deep beneath the ground. We decided that the time was right for our party to test its skills against the great dungeon. The only other challenge that took every member of my party's skill into account was when we met Parnassus, but that didn't happen until much later. Blaze was happy to be moving, and so were the other mounts that the rest of my party were riding. It was a nice ride as we traveled to the small village of Scone. We were halfway to Scone when we were suddenly attacked by a band of goblins. The fight was over the instant they saw me. They sheathed their weapons and gathered around me, speaking boldly and touching my clothing. Surprisingly, they asked me to come back to their village. They made it very clear that they didn't want my party to come along. I went with the goblins, alone. It was the first time I had seen other goblins, besides my parents. They laughed and joked as we went. Their humor was rough and childish, but no worse than some sailors or caravan guards I had seen. When we arrived in their village, they treated me like an honored guest. It was very tribal and uncivilized by human standards. They were distrustful and continually suspicious of everything, but they also had a fierce loyalty to their own kind. They squabbled and bickered continuously, reminding me repeatedly why they had never grown into a powerful nation like some of the other races. In the end, I had to cut the visit short. I could tell that they were already becoming bored of me and that the novelty was wearing off. I suspected that they would likely attack me if I stayed much longer. I learned a lot about my people. In the end, I left with a heavy heart, realizing once again just how different I was. The village of Scone had made the best of a bad situation. Over the years, they had built a thriving community around the abyss. Weaponsmiths, inns, taverns, and general stores catered to the adventurers. They purchased the loot that came from the dungeons and sold new equipment to parties who needed things. My race didn't prove to be a problem. Stories of a goblin mage had reached the small village. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. I trained Robin myself. We trained for many hours. I was able to teach Robin a few things. Nope. For there. Nothing for there. And nothing for there, so we journey onward. We packed up our belongings and left the tavern. We entered the great abyss, although the through the front temple doors. At first, we didn't see anything besides broken pews and an old altar. We cautiously made our way out forward to the catacombs beneath. So far, it didn't seem very dangerous, but everyone knew that the deeper and intrepid adventure went, the stronger the danger, and greater the reward. We were broken from our thoughts by the sound of a group of skeletons approaching. I let Dominic handle it, turning undead and healing injuries. That was the entire reason we had a cleric in our group. Dominic was eager to call his gods and smite the skeletons. They collapsed almost immediately. Rosie was quick to go through the bone fragments for treasure. It was grisly work looting the undead corpses, but we found many valuables. After we had finished taking everything of value, we continued deeper into the abyss. The catacombs had very little dust or spider webs on them, which wasn't really surprising considering how many adventurers passed through every day. We found a rickety old wooden staircase and descended down into the abyss. The wood looked old and ancient, and we hadn't gotten very far when something happened. Rosie found a trap. Rosie was giddy with excitement when the tripwires were spotted. We stood back and watched her deft hands quickly disarm each of them. We were pleasantly surprised to find a locked treasure chest tucked in behind the traps. Rosie picked the lock, and we claimed our reward before pressing forward. There was a solid stone staircase with a light trace of moss that led us down to the next level. The hall was covered in the same green fuzz as the steps. I cast a spell to create a small ball of light and was surprised to see the spell fizzle and the moss glow brightly. I knew that my magic wouldn't be useful until we left the area. Almost immediately, we were attacked by a band of lizard men. Robin fought them off. I was unable to help, as the moss continued to leech away my magic. Luckily, Robin had no such concerns. I watched her sword and I watched as her sword ended the life of each lizard man that approached. When it was over, we were able to proceed forward. The lizard men had coin purses and wore various jewelry that would fetch a decent price when we returned. We collected our reward before going onward. I was pleased to see that the magic leeching moss ended at the next staircase. As we descended, the hairs on my arms stood up. I could feel great magic ahead of us. Gem-filled runes glowed along the wall and floor ahead of us, but the shimmering wall of force prevented us from going forward. I used my knowledge of magic to dispel the barrier. I studied the runes, and I learned the counterspell needed to bring down the barrier. It felt good, and I had done my duty as the party's wizard. It was easy to pry the gems free from the runes, and I knew they would fetch a good price. I knew that we were starting to get somewhere. I was quite certain that most other parties didn't have the ability to get as far as we had. Once again, there was only one direction worth pursuing: straight down. This time, the staircase went deeper than we had suspected until the glow of magma could be seen all around us. The heat and poisonous gas was extremely thick. I crafted a potion of heat resistance. I'd crafted the potion some time ago, and I was lucky to still have some in my bag. We each quaffed one and immediately felt the magic take effect. What had been unbearably hot became gentle warmth, allowing us to continue forward. We continued going down further than anyone had ever gone before. Finally, we arrived at the heart of the abyss. An enormous throne had been built from the skulls and bones of failed adventurers, and sitting upon it was a ferocious demon with blood-red skin. His dark black hair stood out in contrast from the bright red skin, and his muscles rippled as he moved. My demonology classes hadn't prepared me for such a sight. I wasn't certain if he was a true demon, an evil god, or something else entirely. He began to clap as we arrived, but before he could explain his presence, he attacked. I summoned a bigger demon. It was the logical choice when dealing with a large demon. The solution was to summon an even larger one. They wrestled, and fought each other, slamming each other into solid rock walls. It was close, but in the end, my demon won the fight, killing the other creature. We had done it. We beat the abyss. I never learned the true nature of the beast, but the monster stopped coming forth. We were praised as heroes upon our return, but the best part of all the treasure we found gold, gems, and jewelry galore. But one of my party members noticed something special among the treasure. Rosie noticed a shimmering cloak. The cloak shimmered and seemed to swim, making it difficult to look at. I took the cloak of shadows for safekeeping, planning to give it to Rosie when I got the chance. We left Scone.